sitting there, overworked, treating loads. It's just you. It's all in your head. You're doing like a one-man band, playing every single instrument, 5 different sites. What was the goal you set?
I got divorced at the age of 32, which was pretty brutal. I made the decision to keep my 3 kids as much as I possibly could. They were like the priority in my life. I needed to take off about 12 weeks a year to fit in with the school holidays, and I need to work within school hours only.
And that makes you a time millionaire. From sole practitioner to a business that now ultimately runs without your daily input. Hi everyone, welcome to the Optimized Practice podcast. I'm your host today, Blake Sargent, and today I'm joined by Mr. Pete Williams, the owner of a multi-award-winning Eclipse Foot Clinic. And today, Pete's going to share his story of how he built a practice that's very successful, but now can operate without his daily input. One of Pete's main goals was to become a time millionaire, where he could be really in control of his time so he could spend it with his family. So I've asked him to come on to share his journey, which started a long time ago, but it really started sort of 10 years ago or so. So Pete, thanks for coming. Pete, tell us, how did it all start? Where was the changing point for you?
Like many people, I had a significant life event, which meant I had to make some changes, essentially. I think a lot of us are quite happy to just poodle along, doing the same old, and it's not until you come up against some kind of adversity or something like that actually you have to really think about it and change how you're living your life. So for me, 10 years ago, 2014 it would be, I got divorced at the age of 32, which was pretty brutal. And at the time, I made the decision to keep my 3 kids as much as I possibly could, because they were like the priority in my life. And so I had to go from this not all-consuming, but certainly busy solo practitioner job or role that I had within my company at the time, to something that could actually fit around the kids as much as possible, because it was no point in, trying to be a good dad and only seeing them kind of first thing in the morning and last thing at night when I picked them up from childcare. That didn't really compete for me. So made the decision that I had to change the way I was running things, and that meant getting a team, so that I could continue earning and at the same time, grow other people into great practitioners and things as well. So it was a big turning point, definitely.
For years, you'd operated as a sole practitioner, and I guess a lot of
Correct.
people who are listening to this are doing that. And you can earn very well as a sole practitioner. It's just that if you're not treating, you're not earning. And if you go on holiday, you're not earning, but the bills are still there. So what was the first step to your transition?
Getting some admin help, actually. That was a real priority, because at the time I was doing everything. So I was answering the phones, I was answering the emails, I was treating patients, I was doing all the marketing, I was doing the accounts, everything you could think of running a business, I was doing. And I was great at all of those things. But that didn't leave me any of the time to actually step back a bit. So I employed an admin assistant. And then from her, I employed a podiatrist to come and work in one of the places that I was working. And so she started picking up a lot of my routine patients, whereas I focused on the musculoskeletal side of things. And we basically grew it from there. But I had to make that first step and actually start designing some systems around how the administrator would work, how the podiatrist would work when I wasn't around to support them, which was quite challenging because my time was very limited. And yes, that kind of gave me that little springboard to kind of reduce hours. So it was that was the real priority for me.
When it comes to the properties you were in at the time as well, alongside being the sole practitioner, were you in the initial setup, were you room renting or whatever? And then as you evolved, what happened with the property side of things?
Yeah, in 2014, I was in 5 different clinical spaces. I was in 3 private hospitals, a physio unit, and a GP surgery. So fingers and lots of pies. No real consistency in them, but different location pretty much every day of the week, which meant it's really hard to market 5 different sites, and you are literally pulled in different directions all the time because one might be performing really well, one really might not be, and so you have to make some decisions about how things should look. So planning for what you actually want is kind of key in that respect. So I knew that I wanted to cut down to no more than 2 clinical sites, possibly 3, but certainly that was the first step. I was just to consolidate where I was into 2 clinical sites essentially, so we could manage those far better, and also give us some ownership of it. It's really hard to make changes in somebody else's business. So if you're renting a room off somebody, you can't make changes that you might want to that building, to the setup of the rooms. So really, you've got to look at that and go, actually, if we had our own space, we can do what we want and make it like brilliant. Which is what we ended up doing.
That's true, and I remember you being very good at that bit, the long-term thinking, going, okay, it's easy to plan, like you think of what's happening in the next 12 months, but where do you want to be in 5-10 years? Because now we're like 10 years down the line, things are very, very different, but you'd started setting those goals 10 years ago. I need a different property, I need a different model.
Yes, very much so. I think it was the 5-year plan. That was the real key driver, actually visualizing where we wanted to be that far down the line. It's a really good time span because essentially it's far enough away to dream a little bit and think, oh, this could be great if we got to here, but it's not so far ahead that it's actually completely out of context. So you can actually picture yourself getting to that point, and that's exactly what we did. We hit our 5-year plan bang on the nose, which was pretty good.
So what was the goal you set? You're sitting there, overworked, treating loads, it's just you, it's all in your head, you're doing like a one-man band, playing every single instrument, 5 different sites. What was the goal you set?
I need to take off about 12 weeks a year to fit in with the school holidays, and I need to work within school hours only. That was the goal, and I needed to figure out what that looked like in terms of people. How many people I needed to employ to support that, and how many sites I needed to run that out of to achieve the kind of revenue and scalability that we were looking at over 5 years, and that was really important.
Perhaps let's jump to the end of the story and go, okay, how are things now? Then let's backtrack and you can share with people some of the key pieces to the puzzle that took you through that transformation from sole practitioner to a business that now ultimately runs without your daily input and that makes you a time millionaire. So what's where are we at nowadays?
Cool. So we have 2 sites. We have 2 clinical spaces, one in Basingstoke and one in Winchester. They're both 3-chair clinics. We employ currently 6 podiatrists plus me. We're looking to get another one next year. We're interviewing tomorrow for that. And the intent is that, my role nowadays is very much off the tools. I don't treat. I haven't treated for 3 years, or just over 3.5 actually. And as a result, I've been able to spend my day is now mentoring and looking after everybody else. And making sure they have a good amount of time off, make sure they get the most out of work when they are here, because it is a job. At the end of the day, it's got to be a nice place to work. So essentially, I look after other people now. That is my goal within this company, and I think we're in a really good place. I certainly take off plenty of time every year, probably more than 12 weeks.
For those listening as well, it's easier said than done, right? You're on the pitch, you're player manager, you're all playing as at the same time, you're treating, and at some stage you go 3 years ago, you go, right, for this team to be the best it can be, I'm going to step off the pitch completely. I'm going to be on the sideline. Now I'm just going to work with the team. How do you do that?
By being brave, and if you're thinking about expanding your team, but if you take on a podiatrist and they are 40% full and you're still working in clinic and you're 100% full, why are you paying that person like a good salary to sit there with big amounts of time off when you're like still flat out. So I actually shifted like an entire caseload over to a new podiatrist at one stage. I shut off my clinical diary and I was no longer available. And that's so you've got to trust that you can mentor that person to do the job, or the quality clinical provision that you think you're doing, and pass that over. Interestingly, most of those patients now, if I ever have to cover a sickness or anything like that, they're like, "Oh, that's right. I'll wait until Olivia's back in, or Lauren, or whoever it is," because apparently they're pretty good too. So all good.
That's great. So what's the process that you use to mentor your team? How often do you speak to them? Like, how do you mentor them?
Yeah, so I think we have formal mentoring every month. So we'll carry out a half an hour, 45 minutes one-to-one every month of the year. And as part of that, we go through, what's been successful in the last month, what have they done really well, what are they proud of, what are any roadblocks that they've come up against. Are there processes that we need to put in place, something that's missing? Is there some education that they need to be able to provide a certain treatment? And we then action that. So we just use some software that we use in the background for monitoring all of that, and for making sure that people are achieving our outcomes that we want to achieve as part of that one-to-one. And I will go and sit in with clinicians quite often. And I will literally work one-to-one with them and coach them within a clinical setting. We tend to do that again once a month or so, just to make sure that they are happy, I'm happy with what they're doing. And again, that seems to be a very positive way of doing things. We don't browbeat, we just look at if there's anything that is of concern. We will look at ways of managing that and improving it. It's all about education at the end of the day.
So they get a one-to-one every single month where you run through their numbers with them and see how they're performing, get any feedback. What other meetings do you do with it as your team as a whole then?
So we have a monthly whole business meeting. So we'll get everyone together for like an hour and a half, go through sort of our company figures. We'll go through what's been good, what's been bad again, anything that we need to action. And the team sort of have a form to complete about a week before that. So if they want to submit anything for the agenda, that goes into the meeting. We do 4 off-site meetings every year. So they will typically be between half a day and a full day. The most recent one, we went to Pennyhill Park Spa. I took up the whole lot of them out there in November. And so we did a bit of a meeting in the morning and then spent the rest of the day in the spa. It's quite a nice gig, to be honest. And we also once every 6 weeks. So we'll book off an hour and a half and actually go through any case studies or difficult patients that we need to talk through, and sort of work through those as a clinical team. And the admin team also have a meeting once a month for about an hour and a half to go through anything on their end too.
Question that might be coming from other people's ears: how do you afford all this, right? Because when you're treating yourself, you go, hey, well, I get to keep the money. Now, in the modern day, like you not only do you have to pay, but you've got to pay people well if you want people to stay, and you want to reward them appropriately. So
Sure.
What did you have to shift around the figures and the numbers? What was your learnings?
So I think one of the very first things I implemented, which was 9 years ago now, was we did put a lot of our prices up. If prices have been static for more than 12 months, they are absolutely behind inflation, and it's just an annual thing that we do now. So we have to be a competitive, but also a realist when it comes to looking at our costings for our clients. So we do a variety of high-end treatments. We don't just cut nails all day. So we have a relatively high average spend as a company. And we also reward the clinicians with what's called a wage adjustment. So essentially, if they work really hard and they bill above a certain amount, they get a proportion of that in their salary at the end of the month. And that's been a really good way of looking at that, because it means if we're making good money through them as a company and we're rewarding them really well, it's like a win-win. You can't really argue against that. it's a fab way. Whereas if they were on just a standard base salary, actually, they could be as lazy as they like and they'd still get paid the same. But actually, because of the mentoring and because of everything else that we put in place, they get, I think a really good a good environment to achieve that sort of, success as a practitioner, which gives them a bit of it's not always just about the money.
Looking back again at the pieces that made this journey possible, what are the other pieces of advice? What are the other pieces of the puzzle that people need to know to get the same results as you?
They have to commit some time to planning. It's absolutely essential, because if they don't know where they want to get to, then they're never going to get there, because that endpoint is going to change, over time. So actually taking some time out for themselves to just sit down and think about that is kind of like the number one thing. And I think the other thing is spending time with their team. So if they have a team, make sure they are integrating with them. So don't just sit up aloof somewhere up here. You've got to go and hang out with them and actually see how everything's going, in order to get a feel for how everyone is feeling. Because if someone is like they're just work, and they're 100% full, for example, that's a stressful situation for them, and they're going to get tired and they're going to burn out. And they may be feeling like that and they haven't told anyone until they have to take some time off because they're knackered and overworked. So just, spending time with your team is super, super important, I feel. But also, you've got to be brave and get out of your comfort zone. Because like I said at the beginning, it's very easy to sit around and, just do the same old, but actually to make some changes, you've got to push the boundaries a little bit, and do some things which might be a bit scary. And if you don't, then you're probably not going to get where you want to, certainly as quickly as you could.
That in mind, stepping out of your comfort zone, the main moments were hiring a pod for you, hiring admin, moving to a property, and then
Correct.
stopping treating completely.
Yes.
All right.
Absolutely.
All of those parts of the transition that are at the time terrifying.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's a complete change in environment almost, in terms of what you've been, or certainly what I'd been doing up until that point.
So what's next for you?
Practice manager. So I'm still here, working in the company kind of 2 days a week at the moment. And I have some other interests outside of podiatry that I'd like to explore. I've been doing this for 20 years now. And, Eclipse is only, 13, 14, whatever she is. So I've got to, I think there's some things that I would like to do for me, from a business point of view, which don't involve feet. And so, I need to find someone to come and basically take over my role, which is exciting. And I think I don't ever want to lose touch with this company, because it's wicked what I've created here. I love it to bits. But I think, it's an enabler now to let me do other things that I find interesting, which is cool.
What do you foresee as the minimum amount of time you'll continue to need to commit to Eclipse to keep it going as successfully as it's going, right? Because there's a difference between going, it runs without me, I'm taking a year off, nobody's going to see me for a year, which is not what you've done. You can take any time off you want, but how much input is really needed at its minimum?
I mean, I would say I could be here 1 day a week and it would run perfectly well, literally. I think realistically, it's going to need, if I have a practice manager or someone like that in place, I will probably need to touch base once a month is my goal, to be present and make sure people don't forget about me, because that's so I think that will probably be the minimum amount that I will look at being involved. And the beauty these days is that 98% of the business is run in the back end online. So I can access that like data and have conversations with people from anywhere. It's only a Teams call away. So that's made things far more accessible.
What would your parting piece of advice be to anybody who's trapped in their practice, perhaps even a victim of their own success, which, they're busy, they're full, and they, can't take the time off? What would your message be to them?
You need to, because otherwise you are going to burn out. There is no question. If you are absolutely flat out, you have no time off. Funny enough, the person who we've just recruited, she hasn't taken a day off in a year. And when I told her that we gave 5 weeks holiday that she has to take every year, then she nearly cried. So please take the time to step back, book yourself in your diary some time out for you before you start putting patients into your diary for next year or whenever it might be. That's kind of really, really important, because you can't buy more time. And it's an extremely valuable commodity, as I've found out.
Your unique take on this, which I really love, is you've redefined what success means to you, which is to become a time millionaire, whereas the most important asset we have is time, not money. So you started
Correct.
playing that game of, right, I'm going to build this business with the goal of building time for myself. And I think you've done an amazing job at that. So it's a great story. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thanks, dude. No worries. That's great.
All right. Well, look, that's all for this episode of the Optimized Practice podcast. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe so that you never miss an episode, and feel free to follow us on social media. And look, if you want help building your practice so that it can become profitable, stable, and highly respected like Pete's, then reach out to us at The Hive, and we'll show you the recipe of how to get that done. So I'll see you all in the next episode.